Okay, herzlichen Dank. I will switch to English. Welcome. We're very excited that you're all here today. I'm Freya Schachenwald, and together with Lee, we are organizing this event series called KuK-Tuesdays that we have taken over from Jeanne and Foga. So the idea of this event series is that we want to bring together artists, researchers, activists who are thinking about or working with the topic of dislocations in the widest sense. And so this is also what we want to continue with our work here. So thank you.
Also, welcome from me. I'm going to introduce our host for tonight, Dr. Christine Howald, sitting here in the middle. Christine Howald is a Deputy Director of the Zentralarchiv, where she leads several provenance research teams and projects and is head of provenance research for the Asia collections at the Staatliche Museen zu Berlin. From 2015 to 2019, she built up the research focus Tracing East Asian Art here at the chair of Bündig Savoir at TU Berlin and was associated member of the research cluster Translocations. Christine spent 7 years working in China, first for the German embassy, then as visiting scholar at Tsinghua University. In her research, she focuses on the European market for East Asian art and colonial withdrawal contexts in Asia in the 19th and 20th centuries, especially the looting of the Yuanming Yuan and suppression of the Boxer Rebellion. Since 2017, Christine organizes workshop series and conferences on the provenance of Asian art, and the most recent one, a 4-day symposium on provenance and Asian art that she organized together with Joanna Gohmann at the National Museum of Asian Art in Washington, D.C. earlier this November. In 2017, Christine began to initiate a cooperative project on tracing Boxer loot in German museums that finally started on November 2021 as a joint project of 7 German museums together with the Palace Museum Beijing and is financed by the German Lost Art Foundation. So welcome, Christine, and I will give the microphone to you.
Thanks a lot. Good evening, and many thanks for this kind and broad introduction. I'm very happy to moderate this evening tonight, also especially because I was here when this format has been invented and I could participate in that. So it's great just to be in the continuity of this program, and it's great that it continues with now this season, you both. Yes, I'm happy to moderate the discussion tonight, a discussion dealing with a topic that I have been working on for several years, as far as you heard. Thanks a lot for the invitation and the opportunity to talk to some of the colleagues that are involved in that topic and dealing with the topic at the moment. I'm not sure how much you are all familiar with the German colonial involvement in China. You, Philipp Jack, will tell you more about this a bit later. So far, only the most important facts, and feel free to Google meanwhile I'm talking, so you can learn more. China had been forced by the British to open its country to foreigners as a result of the First Opium War that took place from 1939 to 42. In so-called unequal treaties, China was forced not only to allow Westerners to enter their country, but to establish foreign extraterritorial concessions to trade and to export raw materials and to influence the inner political order. The Germans were quite late in engaging in colonial activities in China. In 1888, they established a German consulate in Beijing and built up foreign concessions in China. And from 1898 to 1914, they established what we call in German a koloniales Pachtgebiet, a leased territory in Kiaochu Bay. That's where the Germans built a German model city, Qingdao. For everyone who already had the chance to be there, it's really German Pflastersteine, German Kirche, German buildings, etc. In order to participate in the economic exploitation of China. When the anti-colonial and anti-foreign movement Yìhéquán, known as the Boxer Rebellion in Western literature, arrived in Beijing in summer 1900, the Germans also sent troops for the defense of the foreigners as one party of a 8-nation alliance that also implicated Great Britain, France, the US, Russia, Japan, Austria-Hungary, Italy. Did I forget one? No, I think it was 8, if not Google. And in total, there were 20 or over 20,000 German soldiers or troop members that had been sent to China. So a really mass, that was the most quantity of all nations or army members of all nations. And imagine now, after the Boxer Rebellion, I just call it like this, even if this term is very Western and has to be discussed, but please allow me to do it with maybe entre guillemets. When the Boxer Rebellion had been suppressed, looting took place, burning, plundering of not only Beijing, but the northern part of China. And if you imagine 20,000 soldiers being involved in that looting, plundering, you can imagine how many objects that have been plundered at that time might have entered our private and also public collections. But of course, not only objects have entered our collections or our German culture, but of course many other things, and we will talk about this today as well, like street names, habits, literature, all kind of emotions that left over. I just recently read an article in the Zeit about Paul Maar, so totally different context, and suddenly there was these couple of lines where he said, my grandfather had a Gastwirtschaft, a little restaurant in a village, and there was this guy, he used to fight against the Boxers, and he one day killed a woman, and he said he did so because he was used to kill so many people a day that he came back with this habit of killing people and full of really traumas, emotions, negative emotions, etc. And this just found its way by killing an innocent woman in this village. So wherever you are, you can just jump over these emotions and memories that, of course, these people are now dead and die, but they left something behind. And Paul Maar talked about that because his father was traumatized and just bat him through his childhood. So imagine what this other man might have done to his children, and this is still in our society. So it's a bunch of colonial histories and continuities that we urgently have to identify and critically question. And tonight we will talk about these traces and continuity. Oh, I can't speak English tonight, sorry. Continuities. We will look at them from different professional and national perspectives and ask which role different disciplines such as art, music, and provenance research play in the process of decolonizing Germany in general and Berlin in specific, and what we need to continue this process and bring it even further. And I'm honored now to introduce the three speakers of this evening, Yu Philipp-Jaak, Hang Su, and Silvan Hagenbrock. I start with Yu. Her career started as a trained singer in China. In 2002, 2002, she started a second training at University of Leipzig, focusing on musicology and sinology, followed by doctoral studies in ethnomusicology at Martin Luther University in Halle-Wittenberg. With her following research and curatorial projects on musical instruments at the Grassi Museum of Ethnology in Leipzig from 2015 to 19, and the Center for World Music at University of Hildesheim between 2019 and 22, she also started to deal with the provenance of objects before fully concentrating on provenance research from 2022 on. And in 2022, Yu was research assistant for provenance research of the Chinese collection at the Völkerkundemuseum Dresden. And since 2023, research associate at the Ethnographic Museum of the University of Zurich, where she co-curated the current temporary exhibition Plundered Goods, 5 questions about objects from China at the end of the imperial period. And I'm sure you will talk or tell us more about it very soon. Then we have Hang Su. Welcome, Hang Su. Hang Su was born in 1983. He is a German composer of Chinese origin, interpreter of contemporary music, music theater, creator, photographer, and poet. From 2009 to 12, he studied at the University of Music and Theatre in Leipzig, earning his diploma in music composition. And from 2012 to 16, he completed the composition masterclass with summa cum laude. He is a former scholarship recipient of the Heinrich Böll Foundation, and since 2018, he has been working in music theater, addressing topics such as LGBTIQ memory culture, anti-Asian hate, and women in science. And last but not least, Silvan Hagenbrock. He impressed me in our preparatory meeting last Friday because he is the first person I met that had Chinese in his as a Abiturfach, as a A-level subject. I know the people who try to foster that in universities, but I never met a person who really went through that kind of training. So Chinese on China is part of his life since his early school career, or maybe not early, but later school career. And since then, his life is like intertwined with China. He can be called an urban filmmaker, editor, and artist. Since his studies in Weimar, he studied urban studies at the Bauhaus University, Shanghai, at the Tongji Daxue, and Vienna, where he studied social design at the Angewandte University. He has been traveling digitally between China and Germany for City Makers of the Robert Bosch Stiftung and C-Space, and as co-founder of Yi magazine of the Goethe Institute China. He was a video maker and editor there. In 2013, he co-founded the urbanistic artistic collective Raumstation. His graduation films about Chinese urbanism in Addis Ababa and Zeit zu gehen about a carefree utopia were screened at numerous festivals at Rotterdam, in Milano, at Copenhagen. And he was nominated together with Hang Su, and they both will present their project for the Ernst Börschmann Prize of the TU Berlin with this project, Dusted Atlas, and you will hear more about it soon. So this evening, I don't know who already attended this format, we will hear short presentations of the projects our speakers are involved in, and then I have the honor to ask questions, and we will have like a little conversation on that. And then, of course, very soon you will also have the occasion to involve in that. And I don't want to exclude you before. So if there is any pressure to participate in the conversation right from the beginning, we will not close it. So just give us a sign. I now invite you to give her first little impulse presentation. So thank you.
Ich bedanke mich zunächst ganz herzlich für die Einladung. Ich freue mich sehr, heute hier zu sein und mit Ihnen über einige Aspekte musealer Sammlung zu diskutieren, die mit der Zeit des Boxeraufstandes in China um 1900 sowie der deutschen Kolonialpolitik in Zusammenhang stehen.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I'm going to present about, can I have a look at that, because this is really tough. Thank you. I'm going to discuss several aspects of museum collections on German colonial politics, and I have done research on different museums and wanted to present 2 different projects for you.
Dazu habe ich an verschiedene Museen erforscht und möchte ich Ihnen kurz 2 aktuelle Projekte vorstellen. Ich wurde gebeten, zu Beginn meines Vortrags kurz auf den Boxaufstand einzugehen.
I was asked at the beginning of my presentation to talk a little bit about the Boxer Rebellion.
Der Boxaufstand in China um 1900 kennzeichnet den Höhepunkt einer Entwicklung, die seit Mitte des 19. Jahrhunderts begann.
The Boxer Rebellion marked a kind of peak of a development that started in the 19th century.
Sie ist geprägt durch das Eindringen des Westens in China mit dem Ziel, die politische, wirtschaftliche, aber auch missionarische Expansion voranzutreiben.
It was coined by the will of the West to increase the political, economic dependence and and missionary expansion.
Und auch natürlich koloniale Abhängigkeitsverhältnis auch zu schaffen.
And it was also meant to create colonial dependencies.
Zwar wurde China nie vollständig besetzt, jedoch wurde es gewaltsam in ein Ordnungssystem gezwungen, das durch westliche Spielregeln und Standards dominiert wurde.
China was never formally colonized, but it was forced into a system that was dominated by Western rules and standards.
Erleichtert wurde dieses Vorgehen dadurch, dass sich das imperiale China unter der Qing-Dynastie in seiner Endphase befand.
This was facilitated by the fact that the Qing dynasty in China was at its political end.
Innenpolitische Probleme, ausbleibende Reformen und wirtschaftliche Schwäche verhindern eine Erneuerung des chinesischen Kaisertums aus eigener Kraft.
Imperial problems and lacking reforms were the reason why the Qing dynasty couldn't change on its own power.
Gekennzeichnet für diese Entwicklung war die Niederlage Chinas in den Opiumkriegen, die Plünderung des Sommerpalastes Yuanming Yuan in Peking durch britische und französische Truppen im Jahr 1860 und schließlich der Boxaufstand 1900 bis 1901.
This development was marked by the Opium Wars, the plundering of the Summer Palace in Beijing, and finally the Boxer Rebellion in 1900-1901.
Die Boxerbewegung selbst kann als Protestbewegung breite Bevölkerungsschichten des ländlichen Raums in einer allgemeinen Krisensituation gesehen werden.
The Boxer Rebellion can be understood as a rebellion of the rural population of large parts of the rural population in a general situation of crisis.
Sie war geprägt durch den wachsenden Einfluss europäischer Mächte in China, das Offensivvorgehen der Missionare auf dem Land, aber auch durch das Versagen der kaiserlichen Bürokratie in der ländlichen Verwaltung, eine grassierende Armut und auch allgemeine Notsituation.
It was characterized by the growing influence of European powers in China, the open progression of the missionaries or the open missionary work on the countryside, but also the failure of the imperial bureaucracy in managing the rural areas, widespread poverty, and generally the own weakness to instrumentalize the Boxer movement and to put down the Boxer movement.
Die aus der eigenen Schwäche resultierenden Instrumentalisierung der Boxerbewegung zum Zweck des Machterhalts führte schließlich zu einem internationalen Konflikt, dessen Ziel die Niederschlagung des Boxeraufstandes war.
Finally, finally, the putting down of the Boxer Rebellion became an international interest.
8 Kolonialarmee schlugen auf ihrem Feldzug nach Peking den Aufstand der Boxer nieder und drangen bis in den Kaiserpalast vor.
8 colonial armies put down the Boxer Rebellion and moved all the way to the imperial palace.
Im entstandenen Machtvakuum kam es zu sogenannten Strafaktionen, die mit umfangreicher Zerstörung und ausgedehnten Plünderungen einhergingen.
This created a power vacuum, which was followed by punitive actions and plundering.
Im Ergebnis dieser Jagd nach Wertgegenständen und Trophäen gelangen Unmengen an Wert, Kunst und Alltagsobjekten über Militärs und Händler, schließlich in Museen und Sammlungen weltweit.
As a result of this looting, everyday objects and artworks went through military hands and then later ended up in art and other collections worldwide.
Plunderwaren galt lange Zeit als besonders authentisch. Für China bedeutet dies einen erheblichen Verlust an Kulturgütern.
This loot was considered particularly authentic, but for China it meant great loss in cultural valuable objects.
Auch wenn China selbst diesen Verlust nicht thematisiert hat, weil man diese Phase der chinesischen Geschichte bis heute als Nationalschande empfindet, ist der Verlust im kulturellen Gedächtnis des chinesischen Volks dennoch präsent.
Even though China doesn't really talk about this loss because it has been considered national shame, the actual damage of this loss is still present.
Im Jahr 2022 haben die Direktoren des Völkerkundemuseums Zürich und Frau Professor Mareile Flitsch und ich eine Ausstellung zum Thema Plünderwaren aus dem Boxerkrieg kuratiert.
In 2022, Dr. Yu, together with the Völkerkundemuseum Zurich, organized an exhibition on this loot.
Dem Voran gingen intensiv Forschungen zu sensiblen Kulturgütern aus China, die in Schweizer ethnografischen Sammlungen zu finden sind.
It underwent a preparation on Chinese sensitive objects that can be found in collections in Switzerland.
In der Ausstellung, die am 3. März 2023 eröffnet wurde, stellt wir 5 Fragen an die Objektforschung, mit denen wir unsere Museumarbeit sichtbar und zugleich Grundlage für einen neuen Dialog schaffen wollten.
In March 2023, the exhibition was opened, in which we asked 5 questions with which we wanted to make visible. In which we wanted to make visible in which we wanted to create the basis for a new dialogue.
Wir stellen folgende Fragen.
We asked the following questions.
Hier Kontext. Aus welcher Wissenswelt gelangten die Sammlungen in die Schweiz?
Context, from which worlds of knowledge did the collections come to Switzerland? Yeah, I'm just reading them.
Provenienz. Was haftet den Objekt aufgrund ihrer Geschichte an? Könnerschaft. Worüber sollen wir uns verständigen? Zeitgenossenschaft. Wer sprach und wer spricht gleichzeitig miteinander? Rückbindung. Welche Bedeutung haben die Sammlungen für Menschen, ihre Urhebergemeinschaften? Aus dieser Weise sollte unser Publikum beim Besuch der Ausstellung selbst erfahren und entdecken, wie jede Sammlung entlang dieser Fragen unterschiedlich lesbar wird und wie sich dadurch der Blick auf das Objekt verändern kann.
We wanted to use these questions so that the audience could ask themselves during the exhibition what they meant, and they could discover how a collection following these questions can be read through different perspectives and how our view on these objects can be changed.
Gemeinsam mit dem Besuch und Fachkollegen aus Herkunftsland möchten wir in einen Dialog treten, der Fragen klären sollen. Zeige ich Ihnen noch ein paar Bilder. Das ist unsere Ausstellung.
This is the exhibition.
Ja. Handelt es sich tatsächlich um Plunderwaren? Wenn ja, welche Verantwortung erwächst daraus für die Museen?
We invited the audience and experts from the country of origin to go through the exhibition and to discuss these questions and to actually look at the objects to find out were they actually loot or not.
Wie steht die chinesische Bevölkerung zu Verbleib der Sammlungsobjekte in der Schweiz?
What does the Chinese population think about these objects remaining in Switzerland?
Unsere Ausstellung ist jedoch nicht statisch konzipiert, sondern soll einen Prozess des Erkennens und Verstehens darstellen.
Our exhibition was planned not being static, but to be a process that could facilitate understanding.
So zum Beispiel ergänzen wir die Ausstellung immer wieder durch neue Entdeckung unserer parallel laufenden Forschung.
For example, we would always add new discoveries of our research while the exhibition was running.
Zudem treten wir über verschiedene begleitende Veranstaltungen und Führungen mit dem Besucher in Kontakt.
We also had different events accompanying in the exhibition to get in touch with the audience.
Über eine Infostation können Besucher Kontakt mit uns aufnehmen oder uns ihren Eindruck vor der Ausstellung hinterlassen.
The audience could get in touch with us through an info point and also tell us their opinion on the exhibition.
Parallel zur Ausstellung läuft unser Forschungsprojekt mit dem Thema Sensibles Kulturgut aus China 1889 bis 1949 in Schweizer ethnographische Sammlungen, Boxerkrieg 1900 bis 1901 und Ende Kaiserzeit 1911 bis 1912.
Simultaneously with the exhibition, we conducted our research project, Sensitive Objects from China 1889 to 1949 in Swiss ethnographic collections, and Boxer War 1900-1901 and end of the imperial era 1911-1912.
Unser Projekt zielt darauf, erstmals für die Schweiz zu untersuchen, in welchem Umfang Kulturgut aus Plünderung in China im Kontext des Boxerkrieges über Handel und Schenkung in hiesige Museen gelangte.
Our research project aims to, for the first time in Switzerland, investigate in which way cultural objects from plundering in China in the context of the Boxer Rebellion came to local collections and museums.
Der Untersuchungszeitraum erstreckt sich von 1889, das ist Aufkommen der Boxerbewegung, bis 1949 Gründung VA China.
The time period that is researched is going from 1889 with the beginning of the Boxer movement to 1949, the foundation of the People's Republic of China.
Die Untersuchung soll sich auf mehr als 10 Museen erstrecken.
The research includes more than 10 museums.
Nach unserem Wissensstand waren Schweizer Staatsangehörige an den Plünderungen nicht beteiligt.
As far as we know, Swiss nationals were not involved in the plundering.
Doch gelangte geplündertes Kulturgut auf den Markt.
Nevertheless, plundered cultural objects came onto the market.
Auch gibt es Anzeichen, dass auch die Schweiz Anregungen unternommen hat, um in den Besitz von sogenannten Boxgut zu gelangen.
There are also hints that Switzerland put effort into acquiring so-called Boxer objects.
In den Archiv finden sich dazu Angaben wie Ausplünderungen in den Straßen von Peking, echt wertvoll, die vermuten lassen, dass es sich um Plünderwagen handelt.
In the archives, we can find data that suggests that objects have been taken through looting. For example, acquired in the streets of Peking, really precious.
Allerdings wurde die Provenienz der Objekte offenbar auch oft vertuscht oder unkenntlich gemacht.
But often in other cases, the provenance of the objects has been made invisible or made more difficult to trace.
Wichtig ist für uns, dass wir auch den Austausch mit Kollegen aus dem Herkunftsland vorantreiben. Ja.
It is very important to us to pursue and to support the exchange with colleagues from the country of origin of the objects.
Im Projekt wollen wir deshalb zunächst gemeinsam mit Kollegen des Palastmuseums und anderen Kulturinstitutionen der VA China die vorhandenen Sammlungsobjekte des Volkskundemuseums der Uni Zürich untersuchen, um daraus Schlüsse für die künftige Umgang mit den Objekten zu ziehen.
For the project, we want to first collaborate with colleagues from the Palace Museum and other cultural institutes in the People's Republic of China to look at the existing objects of the Völkerkunde Museum in Zurich to try to investigate and to find out conclusions for the future dealing with these objects.
Für mich bestand die Herausforderung zunächst in den Sammlungen selbst.
My challenge with the my challenge was the collections themselves.
Während ich mit den deutschen Sammlungen chinesischer Objekte um 1900 gut vertraut bin, waren mir die Schweizer Sammlungen nicht bekannt.
While I'm very familiar with the German collections of Chinese objects on around 1900, I was not familiar with the Swiss collections.
Dabei ist auch zu berücksichtigen, dass die Schweizer keine direkt Teilnehmer an der Niederschlagung des Boxeraufstandes war.
One also needs to consider that the Swiss were not direct participants in the fighting against the Boxer rebellion.
Warte mal, wo ist das? Auch gab es keine Schweizer Kolonialambitionen in China.
Switzerland also did not have colonial ambitions in China.
Daher beschäftigte ich mich zunächst mit der chinesischen Sammlung des Völkerkundemuseums Zürich.
For this reason, I first looked at the Chinese collection of the Völkerkunde Museum Zurich.
Eine Schwierigkeit bestand zunächst darin, dass es sich um eine außerordentlich vielfältige Sammlung handelt.
It was a challenge that the collection consists of diverse objects.
Deshalb schaute ich mir zunächst die Objekte an und
For this reason, I looked at the objects first.
Ja, und grenzt die Sammlungszeit an.
And tried to narrow down the time of collection.
Aufgrund bisheriger Erfahrungen ging ich dann dazu über, mögliche Objekte auszuwählen, bei denen ein Verdacht auf Plünderung nahe lag.
Based on my previous experience, I then tried to identify objects where one could suspect that a plundering had happened.
Die Objekte ordnete ich dann bestimmt Kategorien zu.
Then I tried to categorize the objects into different categories.
Danach betrieb ich eine umfangreiche Herkunftsforschung für jedes Objekt.
Afterwards, I did a thorough research on the origin of each object.
Dazu waren nicht nur Kenntnisse der Archivmaterial notwendig, sondern auch Kompetenz des vormodernen Chinesisch, eine gute Kenntnis historischer Quellen des vormodernen China, der chinesischen Geschichte sowie Wissen um Verschiedenartigkeit chinesischer Sammlungsobjekte.
This required not only knowledge on the archival material, but also of pre-modern Chinese, a good knowledge of the Chinese language, and the diversity of Chinese history and knowledge, and the diversity of Chinese objects themselves.
Hier habe ich zwei interessante Beispiele
Here I have two interesting
für
examples
ein möglicher Plunderwagen.
for possible loot objects.
Hier ist es so eine Ahnenbild. Und das steht auch in unserer Ausstellung. Das ist Objekt vom Völkerkundemuseum Zürich. Und Ahnenbild ist kein Kunstwerk.
This is an ancestral image from the collection of the Völkerkundemuseum Zürich, and such an ancestral image is not considered an artwork.
Das ist eigentlich ein Ritualobjekt.
It's a ritual object.
Und Sie wissen vielleicht, dass chinesische Kultur ist so, dass diese Ahnenverehrung ist sehr wichtig für uns.
And you might know that in Chinese culture, to honor the ancestors is very important.
Deswegen gibt es natürlich auch auf den Kunstmarkt nicht solche werden nicht verkauft.
So usually these kind of objects wouldn't be sold on the art market.
Und dann auch, es gibt auch solche Berichte aus damaliger Zeit und dass solche Ahnentempel werden auch geplündert.
So there are reports of the historical time in which such ancestral temples were also looted.
Nächstes Beispiel.
The next example.
Ja, das ist so eine Geschützrohr.
So this
Also
is a cannon.
Dieses Objekt gehört zu Bernisches Historisches Museum.
This belongs to the Historical Museum in Bern.
Und dieses Geschützrohr stammt aus 17. Jahrhundert.
It's from the 17th century.
Und das ist vom belgischen Missionar verbisst und im Auftrag von Kaiser Kangxi entworfen und auch dann hergestellt.
And it was. Es war vom belgischen Missionar gemacht.
Yeah,
It was made it was commissioned by the Chinese Emperor Kangxi, and it was made by missionaries.
Und ist es auch nachgewiesen, dass es dieses Objekt ist eigentlich eine Plünderwagen, stammt von dieser Plünderung der Pekinger Sternwarte vom Waldesee. Also in 1901.
And it is proven that this cannon has been plundered in 1901 by the German General Waldesee in the Beijing Planetarium.
In dieser Typ insgesamt heute, also so wie ich durch meine Recherche, so wie ich wissen, es gibt nur in ganzer Welt 17 Stück.
As far as I know, there are only 17 pieces of these cannon worldwide.
Und 12 Stück sind in Europa.
12 of them are in Europe.
In Deutschland 4 Stück.
In Germany 4.
2 in Deutsche Historische Museum.
2 in the German History Museum here in Berlin.
Und 1 im Bayerische Armeemuseum.
And 1 in the Bavarian Military Museum.
Und dann noch eine bei Fest Coburg.
And 1 in Coburg.
Ja. Okay, ich habe noch eine ganz kurz abschließen. Abschließend,
To conclude.
abschließend möchte ich nur kurz auf ein weiteres Projekt verweisen, das ich als Pilotstudie am Völkerkundemuseum Dresden durchgeführt habe.
So finally, I just want to mention one more project that I did at the Völkerkundemuseum in Dresden.
Für dieses Projekt wurde ein völlig anderes methodischer Zugang gewählt, der den Sammler chinesisches Objekt aus dem Boxerkrieg in das Zentrum der Forschung stellt.
For this research project, I took an entirely different methodological approach to put the focus on the objects that were looted in the context of the Boxer War.
Falls Sie interessieren an diesem Thema, Sie können auch später mich fragen oder wir können auch in unserer Diskussion auch darüber sprechen. Vielen Dank.
If you're interested to talk about this project, you can approach you later during our drinks, or also we can discuss it in the panel discussion. And sorry for my very rough translation.
Thanks so much for the translation. It was great. So, thanks you. Okay, but now we will have Hang Su and Sylvan Hagenbreck presenting their project called Dusted Atlas.
Ist da auch ein Mikrofon? Vielleicht nehmen wir 2 Mikrofone.
Ja.
Danke. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Thank you very much for the introduction, Yu. It's very helpful to have a historical overview and that the audience and us are somehow on the same knowledge what we are talking about tonight. Maybe one step back to this picture we had before, this canon. We were actually talking about this guy called Waldersee, right? There's a street name labeled in Berlin Wedding neighborhood after him, still until today, Walderseestraße, without any sign which is referring to his history. What he did in China, how many people he killed in China, what he did so far in China, etc. So just this to mention. Thank you very much for the invitation, for being here, for having us. I will start actually with a short introduction about how we met. I think it was in 2016 at a conference at Robert Bosch Foundation headquarters about city making between China and Germany, where I was part of the curatorial team and you were assisting us. And it's so nice that we are, after these kind of years, standing here and that we did this project together. I couldn't have believed it when I was meeting you in 2016.
Exactly, yes.
So we are talking about our Dusted Atlas. We're going to keep it short, starting the timer. We just finished actually our performative approach, our audio piece in the last 2 weeks. We are now doing the accounting report, calculating our budget again. And we were tracing the German colonial history in China in today's Berlin urban sphere, urban landscape. We brought a little overview of our performative approach. It's a 1-minute trailer, unfortunately only in German language, without English subtitles, but we will then translate.
Man kann die Kiaozhou-Straße oder den Pekinger Platz umbenennen. Aber wir müssen den Bezug zur Geschichte beibehalten, die Erinnerungsperspektive umkehren.
Musterkolonie,
Deutsche Kolonie,
Pachtgebiet,
das Qingdao-Bier.
ein deutsches Happyland in China.
Warum hatte mir bisher sonst niemand von Kolonialismus erzählt? Wie wollen wir uns erinnern?
Warum finde ich kaum was über die chinesischen Widerstandsgeschichten? Warum kennen wir sie hier kaum? Wir fragen uns, welche Widerstandspraktiken es in der und um die deutsche Kolonie herum gab.
Mit unserem Dusted Atlas wollen wir uns die dunkle Seite, die Rückseite der Geschichte anschauen.
So you saw a very short trailer of our performative audio piece, let's call it like this, Dusted Atlas. We did this last October for 6 times at 3 different places in Berlin, spaces, in Berlin-Wedding, at Pekinger Platz, Kiao-Straße. Then the second place was the former Kadettenanstalt, so the school for young cadets, soldiers in Steglitz-Zehlendorf, neighborhood Lichterfelde, and the third place is the former Asian Museum, Ethnological Museum in Dahlem-Dorf, where still the depot is today, and close by the Museum für Europäische Kulturen. So these were the 3 places we were working with. And maybe Hang, you can continue how we actually came up doing something about this topic.
Yes, in the 2022, both of us was visited this exhibition in Steglitz Villa, Schwarzische Villa. I found very interesting that this person who called the name
Karl Fischer.
Karl Fischer was once in China at the beginning of 20th century as a soldier, being there for several years, working there as a soldier, and then after that he was a former founder of a German Wandervogelbewegung. Yeah. And he was settled in Qingdao. Therefore, at the end, I find, okay, it could be a very interesting topic. And I also saw his photography, which has a sense of homosexual images. Though at that time, we didn't know that he could be part of the, let's say, had a sense of the homosexual content. But as we did a research and together in the archive of him, we really found some interesting things about his private life. Yeah, it was also the beginning that we want to change the personality also to our project, who was involved in this kind of part of colonial company stuff, and to our research, and to see if there's a new connection, a new perspective opening for this kind of research and artistic project. Yeah.
And as Christina already mentioned in our introduction, I had the privilege to start learning Chinese in high school, doing my A-level there, and had the privilege then to go to China for doing a year abroad. Beside the military service, I chose the civilian service at the German school. And for my first time in my life, I was at the former German colony in Qingdao, China, as being 19 years old, I think, being very unreflected, not reflecting my body in the space, in the city space, not reflecting on what I'm seeing there in the city of Qingdao, seeing this German colony, seeing this German, former German colony relic sites, and going to this brewery. Maybe all of you know this Qingdao beer, Qingdao Pijiu, which is being offered in Chinese restaurants until today, which is also a relic of the German colonizers there. So I was walking through the city, very not having an idea of what this means today, how to work with this. And then after the years, I had the chance to work for the city making project, combined with architects, researchers who are researching on the architecture in this former German colony in Qingdao. So there, for the first time, I was learning to reflect more in a more controversial way these relic sites, and then produced a video walk during the pandemic on Beijing Square, Pekinger Platz, talking more like my first steps coping with the issue critically. And then I was very happy meeting you again and continue Dusted Atlas performative audio walk, where you can see here one image which we took in front of the former museum for Asian art, the depot, the archive is still there, and leading a group with up to 15 participants around the neighborhood, maybe 200 meters, not that long walk we did. The audience was wearing the headphones. They were listening to a essay we were writing for 2 months. So we started the Dusted Atlas project in March or April this year, having received a scholarship by Fonds Darstellende Künste, a fund who is supporting performing arts and public space, and then applying for other fundings. And then we finally got the fund for urban practice, Stiftung Urbane Praxis, where we can finally go into the space and doing something for free. Well, for the audience, for free, of course. So this is the Taku-Straße, Iltestraße, a street name referring to the dark side of the German colony in China. Taku 4, which was destroyed by the German colonizers, and Iltesstraße, which is not an animal, it is the name of the cannon boat. So we were doing this performance, we were using different approaches, using our body to very function, to very have easy body movements, not like interrupting the audience of what they are hearing while having a big movement going on, but more like very small, simple aspects, like using this rope at the street names. And what else we had during the performance?
It was very interesting that I could do this kind of project outside of a theater or a concert hall. I noticed that actually we need a lot of extra work. Every time we meet in a new space, we actually need a new version of performance. And we also decided to make this project as a performance project, not a theater project. It's also very important to us, just because we wanted to keep the room for the audience that they can listening to this audio guide and have its own version, but at the same time they are also involved into the working process. Yes, we have also the flagged leading people going with us. And I find it's actually the space every time give us a lot of response to making this project together with this kind of audio guide, and because I am concerned a little bit, it's because we have to use a very small personal dimension in this situation, and to contribute such a big mass of, let's say, the landscape and the buildings. Therefore, I was still happy that it works in that way, because we only have 2 persons and 1 assistant who have to take care of all of our staff in each location. And also we have at the end a radio piece together with my poem. And at the very last is a music piece, also the performance or project. I call it, because it's a founding objective for me, for myself, and every time you play in different weather, different temperature, and different positioning, it sounds just different. I cannot control basically how it sounds and when it sounds like what. So it's also the first time I use this object outside of a concert hall or theater performance. Yeah.
So yeah, time is over. Maybe just as a summary. So we used the audio piece combined with, you see it here on the picture, this blue costume. We invited a costume designer creating costumes for this piece, inviting also sign language interpreter for one date, and combined it with the video piece and audio piece in the end. So these were the approaches we had in the end, and trying to translate it into the certain site-specific places. It's very hard to describe the own piece. I hope it was not confusing for you, getting a very small idea of what we did in the last month, and continuing our talk now. Maybe it's becoming clearer then. Thank you.
Sounds great. Sounds very good.
Thanks so much to both of you as well. I think we got such a broad insight into the legacy in our collections, with hundreds and thousands of stories, single specific stories behind, and then the missing contextualization, or you started to contextualize street names, emotions, and the ways we can make it visible. And we now have the time to explore all the missing things, or what still lays in there, and what we couldn't talk about so far. But I would like to start with a very simple question, because I'm really curious. When did you first learn about the colonial past of not only Germany, but in general the colonial past of China, or the Western colonial past in China?
Maybe the question first for the American people.
Okay.
As I tried to mention before, I think it was visibly in front of me when I was like 18 or 19 years old. I hadn't had this topic in school, I think. So it was around, when I was 19 years old, so 2010.
When did you learn about it?
Also für mich ist so, das war eigentlich in der Schule. In der Schule und bei Geschichtsunterricht natürlich wurde dieser Boxerkrieg auch natürlich sehr, sehr als wichtig behandelt.
I heard about it in school, and especially the Boxer War was considered very, very important.
Ja, und also die Schüler müssen lernen, und das ist eigentlich das darf nie wieder passieren. Das ist eigentlich eine Schande und für Chinesen, und das darf nie wieder passieren, und auch für jüngere Leute. Also das ist auch eine Warnung, ja, das ist eine Warnung für Chinesen, und das ist auch die Schüler, die jungen Leute sollen auch praktisch, das ist eine andere Art von Motivation, dass China nie so schwach sein dürfen, ja, so.
So as the students, the way we were learned it was considered a shame for Chinese people. It was also considered as a kind of warning that something like that was not supposed to ever happen again.
And is it also, or what do you learn about? Do you learn about the cruelties? Do you learn about objects that left the country? What exactly do you learn in school?
Also wir lernen eigentlich natürlich dieses Ereignis, was passiert, und also diese über Objektplünderung eigentlich sehr nur oberbegrifflich, zum Beispiel sagen, sehr viel geplündert, sehr viel getötet. Also tatsächlich Einzelheit wissen wir eigentlich nicht über Objekt, über diese welche Art von Plünderung. Das habe ich zum ersten Mal eigentlich hier, als ich hier in Deutschland im Museum arbeite, das erste Mal eigentlich klar geworden. Ja.
So in school in China we learn about the event itself, but about the objects and the plundering we learn very little. For me it was the first time that I was working at the museum here in Germany, where actually I learned about the objects and what had happened with the plundering.
What about you?
Yeah, my experience was almost the same like you, because actually we have too many things to learn in that school time. Therefore, it's a lot of information actually for us. And I think I was in the in the school time always a little bit outsider, so I'm not really remember a lot of things. But since I came to this topic in the last year, I found several of documentary which was made during 2017, 18, 19. It seems like from the television in the local television channel. They made them, but they consider the colonial history in a very positive contribution, like we have the building, we have those things as a heritage. They want to turn this meaning a little bit positive. It was very surprised because I learned in the school totally different stuff, and there's also less detail and more like a result. We were told that these things happen here and there, but we just also image that in that time the book was printed in a very bad way, so we have all the things actually not so good pictures. So actually everything is a image in kind of translated way in those pictures, but not photos. So I was really very impressed that first time I see in the exhibition of from Carl Fischer's Heritage, I see some photos really taken in that place. It's therefore for me also very interesting moment. Yeah.
We will come back maybe to China later and China's perspective on the topic today. But first of all, I would like to dive more into your work at the moment. And of course, I keep an eye on the time and that you have enough space to ask your questions. As I said before, whenever you need to jump in, let me know. I don't want to exclude you. I would like to know from you both, is there any specific group of people in Germany or outside Germany that you want to reach? What exactly do you want to achieve with your work?
Actually, as I was working for anti-Asian hate topic, I think the second generation of Asian diasporas is my main audience of all of my work from that time point from 2021. Actually, I'm just thinking about the people who I want to reach. It's actually to see maybe there's a collective memory also over all the nationalities of Asian countries that make my motivation to do this kind of work, because I also do the contemporary modern music. They have totally different field of thinking, and there's mathematics, there's models of how to get into this deep listening, but in this part I want to do a totally different, I have now a totally different motivation to do totally different work. Yeah,
it's maybe easy to say we want to reach all the people outside, all the neighbors of Pekinger Platz, all the people who are crossing the place, who don't know so much about the history, reaching them while maybe breaking this kind of line or this heavy steps towards a museum, I don't know, to really address the people outside on the street. Hey, do you know the German colonial history of China? There's a performance or an audio piece going on today, come over. Reaching younger people, reaching the architectural urbanist bubble, of course, reaching the scientists who are focusing maybe mainly on some point, when you go through the literature and media, mainly on, let's say, the beautiful so-called German architecture and the former colony. Well, look at the canalization, look what big improvements they did. Most of the time, not every time, of course, I can't generalize, but mainly there's only one or two sentences referring to the dark side of the whole picture, referring to the massacres the Germans did on the streets, in the countryside, in the colony. So we want to step into this kind of niche, uncovering traces, looking at the dark side mainly, not mainly but also, and bring it into the discussion in the urban space. And in the end, when we looked through our participants lists who joined us during the performances, we see a very mixed kind of audience. We reached the Asian diaspora, Hang said. We reached also a lot of elderly, a lot of young people, family, friends, and many that said, "Oh, I didn't know this story. It's so interesting. You have to continue, of course, bring it into the urban space with QR codes, or bring your traces, what you found out, into the space more specifically. Leave traces too, and let's try to change street names. Of course, there's the demand. We are not quite sure what the best strategy is. Should we rename street names or not? We can talk about this. But yeah, reaching, in the best sense, a huge audience. And of course, with our funding by the Stiftung Urbane Praxis, we had also, there was a demand of offering sign language interpretation, so also stepping into a community we didn't know before, trying to reach deaf people, for instance. And yeah, maybe we failed in this sense, but so far this is an answer.
Is there also a group, if I think of course, museums are dealing with that topic and there are books, journalists are writing about it, but is there a group that you specifically can reach, that the others can't reach, that these kind of approaches is maybe really important to reach these people? Or is it more with all our work, if I say our, the whole group of us, it's always the same audience, and then I would ask, whom do we miss reaching out?
Yeah, I think the diasporas, especially, I was surprised that so many so-called Asian face was at a performance, because in my former project, somehow even I do a lot of specific advertising stuff, but actually diaspora is very difficult to collect for my own performance. Therefore, I was very surprised that they come to us and they have also different background, like come from maybe Hong Kong, Taiwan, somewhere else. They are also interested in those topics.
Thank you. A question for you. When I was in Zurich, and really I can only recommend you to visit this really great exhibition that Mareile Flitsch and Yìhéquán raised there or opened there. I learned from Mareile Flitsch, the director of the museum, that one approach is really specifically to involve the diaspora to museum work. Do you know anything about it? Are you involved in that? And then the next question would be, because you said in your talk that the exhibition is like a work in process, or it's a process, but who is like creating this process, and who is maybe also changing the narrative? Is it still the Western Museum woman in this case who is creating that narrative, or are you already involving other people there? How open is that?
Das hatte Mareile mir gesagt, genau, dass ein Anliegen ist vom Museum, die Diaspora mit reinzunehmen, ganz bewusst. Und die zweite ist, du hast gesagt, dass es nicht mal, dass es ein offener Prozess ist, diese Ausstellung. Aber wie offen ist der? Wer setzt quasi dann ein neues Narrativ rein? Seid ihr das wieder? Oder, genau, oder seid ihr soweit, da quasi auch Stimmen von außen direkt aufzunehmen? Was für Wege geht es da? Oder genau, in welche Richtung denkt ihr da vielleicht?
Also praktisch ist so eigentlich, also wir haben praktisch eine offene Ausstellung, und wir sind diejenigen, die natürlich regelmäßig das erneuern.
So we have an open exhibition, but we are also the ones who are changing. Sorry, who are changing the exhibition.
Ja. Aber wir haben natürlich auch, wie gesagt, vorher habe ich auch in meinem Vortrag gesagt, wir haben eine Infostation, wir haben auch sehr viele Veranstaltungen, zum Beispiel Führung oder gemeinsam, also Gespräch. Und dann die Publikum können gerne auch zum Beispiel manchmal ist so, es gibt auch interessante Leute, die ihre Vorfahren waren wahrscheinlich auch Teilnehmer vom Boxerkrieg.
So we have the info stand in the exhibition space, as I said earlier in my presentation. We have a lot of events, we have guided tours, and we have also had people in the exhibition who've had ancestors fighting in the Boxer Rebellion.
Und auch zum Beispiel so eine ältere Dame hat auch Sachen mitgebracht, sagt, das ist von meinem Urgroßvater oder Urgroßvater, dass er war im Boxeraufstand oder zum Beispiel auch solche wie eine interessante Kleidung und dann drauf eine Drachen, irgendwie so eine von einer chinesische Kleidung aus damaliger Zeit 1900 abgeschnitten und dann als Hippie-Kleidung umgenäht. Also es gibt wirklich sehr viel Spur und die kommen auch gerne zu uns, mit uns dann austauschen.
So we have had different visitors reacting to our exhibition. For example, there was an elderly lady who was saying, my great-great-grandfather had fought in the Boxer Rebellion, or another visitor brought in a dress that had come from this context and that had been changed into a kind of hippie dress. So there are a lot of people who want to engage and who bring objects as well.
Auch gibt es auch Anfragen, E-Mail-Anfragen zum Beispiel, sagt auch in unsere zum Beispiel eine Wissenschaftlerin, sie sagt, sie forscht auch in diese, also solche Malerei und bestimmt Sammler und die auch in dieser Zeit irgendwie mit dieser Zeit Verbindung hat. Und auch mit uns natürlich, auch uns zu fragen, ob wir auch in unserer Sammlung auch solche Objekte existieren.
And we also get requests by researchers. For example, there was one researcher who was doing research on paintings and artworks from that time. And then they would ask also if they have, for example, in the collections in Zurich, if they have related objects so that they can work together.
Natürlich auch nicht nur Besucher, dann auch unsere Kollegen aus China, Fachkollegen vom Palastmuseum. Da zum Beispiel, dass ich auch immer mit Kollegen aus Palastmuseum zusammenarbeiten, dass wir auch direkt ein Objekt überhaupt, also praktisch diese Objektanalyse machen. Ja, bestimmt Frage kann ich natürlich nicht alleine lösen, sondern brauche ich natürlich auch Zusammenarbeiten mit Fachkollegen aus Peking.
I also work together with the colleagues at the Palace Museum in Beijing. For certain objects analysis, I'm of course not able to do it alone, but I need their expertise to find out more about the objects.
Und dann sammeln wir diese Informationen und auch Forschung, weitere Forschung, dann wir verändern dann die Ausstellung auch, dann neue Informationen zu ergänzen und neue Objekte zu zeigen. Ja.
So we collect all of this information to change the exhibition and to show even new objects in the exhibition.
Thank you. I now will try to link your work. I often remark tension when it comes to activist work and museum work. Is this tension really there? And if it's there, is this maybe good? No, first, why is it there? And then, is it maybe also good in order to foster the whole process in which we are in decolonizing our society in general?
Well, we went to a few museums exhibitions doing our research, so we were very happy discovering on so many different websites by the Bezirksmuseum, for instance, what they are doing for special exhibitions in this period of time, in the beginning of this year. So we learned a lot also going there, going to the museum, joining symposiums, discussions, conferences. So this was also a very base for our work, right? And tension, is there a tension between our work and the institution? I would say maybe 50%. Why? We were very happy learning, getting to know your colleague, Kerstin Panos, who's also here today, which was very helpful to also having a first step into the institution, your institution, having an exchange, talking about what you are doing, talking about or sharing what our approach is. And then, yeah, like having the snowball principle, like you get to know other people, you're getting to know person who is a conservator at the museum for Frühgeschichte maybe, and then you can ask your question to this person and you dig deeper into your own research and find out that there are human remains left in this depot, and you learn through this contact that a PhD student is doing a paper about one human remain in the city of Marburg. So you know what I mean is we have to have this this connection on the one hand to dig deeper and make stories visible and raise more questions, and then maybe having little demands. Like I raised questions several times, and I asked you last week in the pre-talk, why isn't there any chance to also as an performer or urbanist, researcher, composer, whatever, to go to the depot to have a look on the collection, right? So yeah, raising these questions and these demands, there is an increasing number of people asking you, hey, I would like to have a look on your depot. Please tell me what is on the list, how many human remains are left from China in German museum collections. I couldn't find any number. It's hard to give a number, of course, I learned, but there are still a certain amount, and how to cope with it. And then, yeah, it's like it's a really crazy research approach, learning these kind of facts, that there are human remains left in the collections, and then learning from Chinese side, are there initiatives who are demanding these human remains? And then another comment from another guy through email said, no, we can't research on this topic specifically because we are full of work covering the research on human remains of the German colonies in African countries, so we can't cover the German colony in China. So all these different answers we got, and we tried to put it into the essay. So I kind of talked a bit about other aspects, but yeah, like important to have this connection. You want to add something, huh?
For myself, it was like because I years before I'm graduated, and I didn't notice that actually the new music and contemporary music branch needs also kind of decolonization process, because if I look back, all of our music education came from Western. Actually, we don't. The music student don't have any knowledge about Chinese traditional music. Actually, I always forget to mention that I was graduating. My first university degree was in China, in Minzu University, as the University of Nationalities. I'm not so happy with that time because I have to deal a lot of problem. Therefore, I have in that time a lot of chance maybe to know the traditional Chinese music or traditional ethno music a little bit more. But in that time, this area, this stuff was not really good developed. Therefore, there's a lot of potential to work with musicians. Maybe now I'm living in Germany for over 15 years, but actually I don't have that chance anymore. I was a little bit sad about this stuff.
Maybe you. Sorry, do you have to add, or do you want to add something? If not, I would.
Also über diese, also ich habe eigentlich in China Gesang studiert.
No, I don't get into this whole music. I think that brings us to another topic. Maybe we just then do another session on music.
Aber so wie Hangsu auch, wir haben wirklich also westliche Ausbildung, also westliche Musikausbildung gehabt. Das ist wirklich ganz wenig, wahrscheinlich bei Musiktheorie, so vielleicht ein bisschen über chinesische traditionelle Musik was gelernt, nur theoretisch. Und ich habe natürlich immer, also Operngesang studiert auch. Ich habe Operngesang studiert, ich bin auch Sopran. Also das ist völlig westlich eigentlich. Ja. Es ist wirklich so.
So you was confirming that her musical training in China was also very Western, that she's a trained opera singer, and that she maybe learned a little bit of music theory from China, but most of it was Western training.
I have one last question topic before I open this, and this is China. Where stands this topic in China? You mentioned in your talk it's not discussed in China. We experience in our project it's a raising topic in China. There is press writing about it. There is YouTube videos from famous TV broadcasters talking about the topic. So we just observe that it's a raising topic, and also with the colleagues we speak. What would you say? Where stands China in coming to terms with the colonial past, and specifically with the German past and towards Germany? Yeah, maybe very general, this question. And maybe also I can add, because I see your eyes, how is your link then, and how are your projects linked to China? You already mentioned you work with the Palace Museum and with other institutions, but is your work already, does it only have an involvement in Germany, or already a link to China? And maybe in the future, do you want to link it even more to China, or start to link it to China? So 2 questions, sorry.
I would love to learn more about the Palace Museum. You mentioned it, and also you, right? You're working together with the Palace Museum, having an exchange there about objects. And I'm curious, where are the other institutions in China we can work with together on this topic? We couldn't find any partner yet. We got one contact. You also probably know, but I can't mention his name probably. This person is a historian in Qingdao. He's creating his own postcard collection the last decades, having created a huge own archive and presenting this topic to the world, giving interviews to German media on this topic and so on. So this was also one contact of us, and had a certain exchange about hey, could you imagine talking about the massacres the German did on Chinese people in Qingdao? And then the answer was yes and no. He said, I can talk about this topic, but only at the Beida, let's say, at an university setting with, the Allied, let's say, he said. But he can't mention this topic on a discussion in Qingdao where residents or the neighborhood is invited, probably. That was somehow his answers. So yeah, we are curious how, and we raised the question to ourselves, can we do this kind of performance in Qingdao, which is based on our research covering up these stories, also Hang Su's own stories, growing up in Yantai, talking about homosexuality and combining this topic to colonialism. And there it starts, right? Where does the censorship criticize our text? And so then giving a barrier, giving a barricade to our main performance. But we would love to go to Qingdao, walking there, listening to an audio piece with the local partner institution as well, and making this topic more visible. But I think there are some obstacles, and as we can see now, since I'm also I worked for Goethe Institute China as a freelance video maker. I created this e-magazine. We see a huge shortage in the budget. So, of course, I was the first one who got the budget cut. And so, yeah, let's talk about this cultural dialogue. Let's talk about how important these formats are, getting in touch with each other, talking about ideas, approaches, strategies. So I'm very thankful for sitting here talking about this topic. But yeah, e-magazine got a shortage. I see 6-tone magazine, they had a change of editors. They are decreasing the number of articles online. SubChina, a huge informative website blog, shut down last weeks. So we need formats like this. So how to come back to the last years where we developed so many interesting projects and exchange platforms. How can we continue this work if there's such a big budget cut, right? So it's very heavy, or like very even not possible to go there now doing something, right? So we have to ask partners. We are looking for initiatives in our age who could who's doing this kind of work we are doing. They are somehow, but we couldn't find it so far. So yes, this was my thought on this topic.
Thanks a lot. Is there any?
Eigentlich für mich ist so, diese Zusammenarbeit mit chinesischen Kollegen ist für uns wichtig. Ja, für uns wichtig, besonders bei bestimmten Kategorien von Objekt, zum Beispiel Porzellan. Das ist natürlich sehr schwer zu identifizieren, überhaupt auch die Malerei. Ist das wirklich echt oder eine Fälschung? Und das ist eine Basisforschung für uns, aber sehr wichtig auch für Ausstellungen, auch für diese Objektaufklärung. Ja, das ist deswegen Zusammenarbeit mit chinesischen Kollegen ist immer noch oder war und immer noch sehr wichtig. Ja.
For us, working together with Chinese colleagues is crucial because they can help us really with the basic research, especially for objects such as porcelain and porcelain painting, to identify the objects, to tell if they are actually real or not. For this kind of work, it is really, really important to work together with Chinese experts.
I also hope that, and this is a very great space and forum and format for that we can continue, and KuK is making it possible to continue that kind of conversation. Who is interested in learn more about how the objects from the loot from the Boxer Rebellion has been dispersed over the world. I just want to make some very short self-marketing for our next conference in the Boxer project, because this will take place quite soon, end of February in Munich, and we will have people from all over the world, and we will learn really about probably the farthest little space where, no, I exaggerate a bit, but where objects can have found their final destination or not final destination, because this may not be the final destination. I deeply hope so, and we are very much looking forward to everything that comes. And I hope that we can continue the conversation. Thanks a lot during the drinks.